Yeah, that's right. Stumbling on Darkside of Purgatory with your host, Never Fear the Hijack. Here, take it away, Jacker.
Okay, welcome, folks. Welcome. I hope we're coming through fine. I got a special show for you tonight. This is the dark side of Purgatory, the true reality of this world. I hate to tell you, folks, but you are in Purgatory. This is the last stop, sort of a final exam, final judgment before the fate of your soul is decided. This is what we're into, and tonight I got a very special guest for you. It's the guy who actually kicked the doors down. He actually broke open into the dark kingdom. I would love to have been there when those gates got kicked open. Satan, Lucifer, on the other side, saying, "Okay, get ready." Thinking a giant's going to come through, and in wheels Zen Garcia under the banner of Christ, and he broke the doors open with his fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain. That there is a second serpent seed bloodline among us. These are the people that have been inserted. There was a great war in heaven. In fact, tonight, what I'm going to do with Zen, because he can speak for hours on any topic. I could say, tell me what happened before the war, and he goes to all these ancient scriptures, and he can just talk. But what I want to do tonight with Zen is actually go through from the beginning of the war all the way to present day and where he sees we're at today. And so for 2 hours, you're going to get jam-packed. I'm going to pick Zen's brain, and we're going to supercharge this whole thing. We're going to rip and roll. Basically, the thumbnail sketch of what I gave you last week, I'm going to actually fill in with Zen on what happened. And I do want to say before I pull Zen in, I'm sure he's there, right, Mr. Rowe? You there, Zen?
Yeah, I'm here, brother.
Okay, fantastic. So Zen's on board. So before I bring Zen in, I just wanted to let everybody know that Nighthawk had sent me a message and for last week, and let me just get it real quick. Let me kind of get it verbatim here. Okay, well, this is from Nighthawk, the owner. Well, damn, Jacker, good job. You raised more money with one show than any host the entire month. And so basically, I knew my people would fight. Hijackerites would fight for the show. I knew you wanted it, and you came through loud and clear. So Nighthawk, it doesn't matter if there's no rules about flat Earth, serpent seed line, a lot of the stuff that Zen talks about, synagogue of Satan. Zen goes the whole way. He's probably one of the only hosts that I know that actually does go the whole way. He's not a gatekeeper. You want to talk Zionism, he'll go with you anywhere. No gates. He kicks them all down like I do. And so we paired up together. And let's see. Yeah, I got that out of the way, a little house cleaning here. And so Zen Garcia, his fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, and he basically showed that this world is not what it appears to be, and that we have half brothers among us of the fallen ones, and they've been here, they've been operating, they've been the kings and queens and pharaohs. Now they're the bankers, the celebrities. I mean, their tribe's big now. I mean, they seem to have almost all governments. I am going to ask them about if there is a Canaanite civil war among this bloodline, among the elite the rulers of this world, and whether there are actually, different cabals actually trying to gain power. You all heard about the great and mighty king of Mother Russia, Vladimir Putin, and how he's been demonized. And then you got different pockets in the world. And I wanted to go through with Zen and see what he thinks about if there is this Canaanite civil war. So with that being said, he really is the one and only. He's actually written 20 books now. He goes through all of this, so I'm sure he's going to reference back a lot of his material. And he also has started a publishing company called sacredwordpublishing.net. And in fact, if you're in the reach of my voice, I don't care if you're in another country. If you go to your library and you have ancient manuscripts or an old trunk from your grandfather or any type of really old books or even letters, documents, Zen scans the world looking for ancient writings. It doesn't have to be, under the banner of Christianity. He looks at them at all. He looks at Japan stuff, Chinese stuff, Dead Sea Scrolls, Jewish stuff. He goes all around. So give him a call, and he'll probably give you a little money if it's good enough. If you got a document and something old, I'm sure he'll give you money for it because he takes his mind and he searches the world. But anyways, Zen, let me bring you on, and thanks so much for coming on. I do really appreciate this because I basically kind of butchered the whole scenario from the beginning with the war in heaven where we were created all the way up to the present. And so hopefully you can kind of repair the kind of the damage I did. I went through too much stuff. So how are you doing, brother? Go ahead.
I'm doing really good, brother, and it's always a pleasure to be with you. It reminds me of old times when we used to do the midnight to 2 a.m. on your show a long time ago, going back 5-6 years now. But yeah, it's always a pleasure to be here with you and Ro, and I'm honored to be your guest and to talk about all these very esoteric subjects. And I think that the way that we tie it together, it can really help people to make sense of how the ancient mysteries and mythologies tie together with even the biblical narrative, and also even the pagan Sumerian mythologies and how all that comes together. So we expose the underlying truth behind all those things to bring forth the bigger picture, what I call the great contest.
Yeah, well, it's real interesting, Zen, with your work. What I've noticed, you always use the canonical biblical text, what people would call the King James Version or the Old and New Testament. You always use that as the foundation, and then I notice that you pull in other ancient writings and witnesses from around the earth. Like I remember one time you saying that Joshua, he made the sun stood still, and that you actually found correlation from some ancient Chinese emperor who I think he killed like a couple of his astronomers or something because he wanted to know why there was a delay of a night, and they didn't have any explanation for it. And so you tie together these things that are that go way back even in other cultures, and so that's your uniqueness, is that you come from a biblical perspective, and then you're able to go and find other witnesses or other writings that corroborate basically what you've been saying. So one thing, Zen, I wanted to just check with you real quick because I just found out tonight. So did you know that Chuck Missler has died?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, you do? I just found out tonight. Yeah. So Chuck Missler, he was a great one, and he died May 1st. And, you count the greatness of a man by how much basically spiritual impact he has for the kingdom of God, which makes Zen a great guy too. But anyways, yeah, he was a great man, and he's going to be missed. And I just wanted to mention that for anybody who didn't know. I think he was like 84 years old, and I think he died within just a couple of years after his wife. Well, he was heartbroken after that. In fact, I asked about, did he ever become a flat earther? And the one person basically told me, look, this flat Earth thing has just started happening these last couple of years, where people are waking up. Between him losing his wife and being so old, he was just too old as the flat Earth came into view. And so I don't think he ever really picked up on it. Do you have any comment on Chuck's passing, Zen?
Well, I do think he did a lot of really good work and brought up a lot of really incredible teachings. He was hesitant on certain subjects, which I understand that, especially with flat Earth. He did talk about the interdimensionality of as far as reality and time, space, and all that continuum. But no, he never really came out in support or really accepted the stance or examined it in a biblical narrative. And I can understand he's probably busy with a lot of other stuff. It's like some of my good friends, even Gary Wayne, he's chosen not to take a stance on the issue because he has not looked at it in a thorough manner. But I respect
Really?
where they are. Yeah. But
Gary Wayne of the Genesis 6/6 of this Genesis 6 conspiracy.
Right.
He doesn't really. He's wow. I'm surprised.
Yeah. Well, he knows that there's definitely some correlations, and and through my work, I bring forth a lot. I mean, it's undeniable in my perspective. But some people are busy. Like right now, he's studying the lost tribes, and he's writing a book about that, and has put forth hundreds of pages to this new manuscript, and so he's focused on that as endeavor, and so so he's not put emphasis on it. But individuals like Rob Skibo, who has he has come out and spoken and took a stance on this as truth, and myself included. You were the one that encouraged me and challenged me, and we talked about that on my show this past Thursday, and so I did go into it and examined it, studied it with great interest. And once I did, it didn't take one day really to come to the determination that there's no measurable curvature and the Earth is not moving, especially at faster than the speed of sound or a bullet shot from a 45 caliber gun. I mean, that's just ludicrous when you think about it. And then, especially, I go outside of my house, and a lot of the days of the week, my flag, which sits atop a 30-foot pole, is completely listless. It's non-moving at all. And in my mind, that shows that not only are we not spinning at 1,037 miles an hour, but we're not even moving at 5 miles an hour. The fact that you can go up in a hot air balloon, go up for an hour, and then if you wanted to parachute out, you would basically come down in the same spot you went up above, which if the Earth was rotating at that 1,037 miles an hour eastward, when you go up, it should be moving out from underneath you. And there's no way you could ever land in the same place. And so those kind of things, even the fact that, a plane, if the Earth were moving at that rate of speed, there would never ever even be an airline industry, because no pilot could land a plane on a runway that's moving at that rate of speed. And so, every plane would crash and burn, and it would be just too dangerous to actually.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, but they got this magical thing that the whole atmosphere is moving all at once, and that you hit a certain point, all of a sudden it turns into a vacuum. And they got so many. I think they pay people, thousands of people, just to sit around and come up with all kinds of cockamamie answers. But once you start breaking everything apart, I mean, even gravity. I mean, how can trillions and trillions of tons of water and tides move? And a little mosquito or butterfly just, they just, the whole thing. We can go into some of that later, Zen. What I really wanted to do tonight, because I was scared that you would, because you can speak about all this stuff pretty extensively. So I wanted to take it from the top. And so my understanding through your work is that in the beginning, God actually created, we don't know how many. It could be hundreds of billions. It could be just a few billion, or it could be a trillion or more conscious beings in which we would call angels. That's what we would think of in the beginning. And that when all these conscious beings were first created, that we were in a type of, the Lord sort of let us be in darkness for a period of time. And then at some point, a great light showed up, and it was God manifesting his son, Yeshua, basically as the light of heaven and earth. And so where am I at on that, Zen? Just on that little bit that I tell you, am I pretty close?
Yeah, as far as the number of souls, nobody knows exactly, but it does say that all of the conscious beings, all the angelic, spiritual angels, whether, in all the elements of the world and all the consciousness that enters into all the creatures of the world, everything was manifest on the first day. And then, as light stepped down in vibration, then the other dimensions, the other sound frequency, wavelengths, all of that stepping down in vibration created and manifest what we now know as the physical worlds, but that the perishable and what we see as the visible worlds all came forth from the pure light, which, God, the Godhead, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit together, the three in one, they were the source and the force for everything. But yes, as you mentioned, in the scriptures, in the Genesis narrative, we see that in chapter 1, verse 1, you have the heavens and the earth being created. And then all of a sudden, in the second verse, the Holy Spirit hovering over the spirit of the waters. And then the darkness, and the earth became without form and void, which in the Hebrew, that is Haya Tohu Wa Bohu, which means that the earth became an indistinguishable ruin and a deserted wasteland. And so something occurred which led to the earth becoming and taking on that state of being destroyed. This is spoken about in 2 Peter.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Okay, so now we got the conscious beings, and you're right, it was frequency. It says in the beginning, God spoke, and he basically spoke everything through his word, and he was able to create. So we got the conscious beings, and now the light is appeared. Now we come to this very strange, several scriptures in the Bible, that there seems to be some type of war that broke out among this angelic conscious type class, with a third of them basically getting behind probably the most beautiful and glorious angel, which, by the way, they say he is a master of music, and that's one of the ways he was actually able to corrupt our society during the 60s. Just such incredible, beautiful music that came out of, the rock era, the 1960s. But anyway, so a third of them went up with him, and then a third of the angels came under the banner of Michael and Gabriel, and that there was some type of war in heaven. What is your take on what exactly happened there, and maybe why? Go ahead.
Well, what happened is that, and I cover this in my 12th book. It's the Great Contest, the War in Heaven. And I speak about how in the very beginning with the Genesis narrative, where we see that the light is introduced, as you made mention of, that when the Father called forth the light and said, "Let there be light," that was actually when Yeshua, the Son, was called forth and given dominion over the angelic hierarchy. Where it says in verse 3, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. That is Christ. He is known as the light of the world. He's the original morning star. This is all confirmed in Revelation. And then we see that God saw the light, that it was good. God divided the light from the darkness. Dividing the light from the darkness, that is when the forces of good and evil took sides. And the reason being is that when you study Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14 in great detail, you see that Lucifer says, "I will exalt my throne above the stars and the clouds of God. I will, um, you know, create his throne in the sides of the north above the mountain congregation, that he will be like the Most High." And so he is, when Christ is introduced as the light of the world, he is jealous of his dominion. And being the first created archangel, and also the greatest and the mightiest amongst all the angels, he desires to be like God and to have the authority and the dominion that Christ was given when he was introduced to the angelic hierarchy. And so at that time, this is when iniquity was found within him. And so he decided to tempt all of the angels to see if any would join him in creating and doing this rebellion so that they could try to overthrow the Christ and to be as gods themselves and to establish kingdoms which they could rule over. And so we're told in the book of Enoch, as to the second book of Enoch, as to when this actually occurred. And it says in chapter 29, "And one from out of the order of angels, having turned away with the order that was under him, conceived an impossible thought, to place his throne higher than the clouds above the earth, that he might become equal in my rank, in my power. And I threw him out from the height with his angels, and he was flying in the air continuously above the bottomless." And so this happened on the second day. And so we know that, again, this goes back that on the first day when Christ was introduced as the light, and then we have the separation of the light and the darkness, that is the war in heaven that took place, that led to the earth becoming destroyed. And then we see in chapter 1, verse 5 and onward, that the earth is being recreated and reestablished and repeopled. And, as far as all the creatures are being reestablished and placed upon it as well. And so this war, this war in heaven is spoken about in Second Peter as being that which is mostly forgotten. It says, "For this they are willingly are ignorant of, that by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, whereby the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. But the heavens and the earth, which are now by the same word, are kept in store, reserved unto fire, against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men." So Peter is telling us that this second world age, this 7,000 year period, that this one will be ended by fire, which is exactly what it says in Revelation, that the stars will come crashing down to the earth, and they will set the earth ablaze, and there will be a new heaven and a new earth before Yeshua returns to take his judgment seat and to bring every knee shall bow and every tongue confess at that time. But it speaks about how there was this destruction, and it all again goes back to Genesis chapter 1 verse 2, where the earth became without form and void. A lot of people attribute this passage to the flood of Noah's day, but they're incorrect in that assessment, because this was before this goes back to when the earth became without form and void and was recreated. And so, it tells us that there was this born heaven, this ancient destruction took place very long ago, and then the fallen angels were cast out and exiled here to the earth. And so when you look at the
Right.
archaeological record, you see that even at the bottoms of the oceans, like in places like Yonaguni and over there in India, the city of Dwarka, which lies at the bottom of the ocean floor, that there were ancient megalithic sites which were constructed at a time when the waters of the ocean levels were completely different. And so it's speaking about, this ancient destruction when this world that then was completely destroyed and was flooded and was wiped out, annihilated. And so,
Yeah, that's what I wanted. Yeah,
yeah,
that's what I wanted to ask you about. So I've been looking around, and on the internet, I'm seeing more and more, and it's almost becoming undeniable. But we're seeing what looks like um, animals and creatures, and even what looks like giants that were turned to stone. It seems like
right.
in a prior time. Um, yeah, I don't even think. I mean, like Devil's Tower, they want to say they could be as high as a 20, 30-mile tree. They're finding mesas that they can't account for all over the world. We got these mesas. It doesn't matter if it's Australia, in between Russia, Alaska, Ireland, that they think very well could have been like giant trees and giantism. Do you think there was a period of time right after that war, when they were thrown down, that there was no firmament or dome over the earth, and that the actual light and the glory of God shone right on the earth, and that was one of the reasons for the giantism that appears to have happened on the earth, and that ultimately something happened there where judgment went out, where he spoke again, and it seems like all of this stuff turned to stone. What's your take on that whole mud fossils and that dictionary of truth and all these different websites that are finding just giant snakes and skulls, and it's just incredible, and I'm sure you've seen it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have. And yes, again, there was a time in the ancient past when, yeah, huge giants, even humanity in the first 10 generations of from Adam to Noah, they were of very much larger stature than modern day humans, and they lived extensive lifespans as well, up to almost 1,000 years. Methuselah lived the longest. I believe he was 969 years. Adam lived 930 years. Noah lived a very long time. Even his son Shem lived 600 years. And so the 10 generations of even humanity before the flood of Noah's day, they lived extensive lifespans and also were of very much large stature. But the children that were born from the fornication of the watchers with the daughters of Cain were of very huge stature, and to the point that we can't even understand. But yes, the flood of Noah's day, it it fossilized them, so that we see even in the mountainous structure and, as you said, these mesas, that there were giant trees for them. And I do agree that even like Devil's Tower is a stump of what used to be a giant tree. There's even a mention of this in Isaiah 14, where it says in verse 7, the whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no feller is come up against us. And so, there's a mention here again of Lucifer and the first world age, and how he and the 1/3 of the angels were cast down, and they were the ones that had destroyed and laid to waste even the giant trees back in that time. And then we have in Genesis 6, it speaks of the sons of God mating with the daughters of humanity. Well, what people don't realize is that when you really look closely at that verse, and I'll pull it up here, but it makes mention um, of the pre-Adamites as well, and that the giants came, and where it says, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. This passage, whereas most people believe that it is only alluding to the time of Yared and the 200 watchers that fell, as it's mentioned in the book of Enoch. This verse is actually taking it back to Genesis 1:26 through 28, before modern humanity, that the pre Adamites had mentioned as being created as couples, male and female. And there were multiple, it wasn't just one particular pre human, but that it was then, because it was in Genesis 1:26 that they are told to go forth and to multiply on the face of the earth. Modern humanity, in the form of Adam and Eve, they were never told that, because Adam and Eve were created as spiritual, bright natured beings, and they were placed into paradise. They were not created on the earth. It was only after they fell and were cast out of paradise that they found themselves exiled here to the earth. And so this passage is actually telling us that the sons of God mated with the pre-Adamites, which is exactly what the Sumerian texts tell us as well. And
So that
that,
would account for, right? Would that account for the different races that we got? The white, the black, the red man, the yellow man. The different races.
yes,
Would
those
that
are all
account
the
for that?
pre-Adamites, right? Yeah, because
Oh, I
the
see.
original pre-Adamites were created in various different colors, different races, and they were also, as you said, they were created male and female in couples, and they were told to go forth and to multiply, and they covered the face of the earth. And so the sons of God actually went and mated with them, and they created this race of giants. So this shows us that the giants were here even before modern humanity. And that's why we see now in the mud fossil record that before this judgment was brought forth, as far as Noah's day, and even in the ancient past, where the earth became without form and void, that there were these giants, and that's what we see locked up, fossilized in the archaeological record. There's a text which I was going to do a show about this, because I had read in an ancient text. It's an Islamic text, an Arabic text, very old. It's one of their most prized. It's called the Mother of all books, or Mother of all books, something of that nature. And in that book, it describes how the giants uh, became the mountains and became the different structure of the earth. And so, since there's all this interest in mud fossils and all the different things that we are seeing now with the work of Mud Fossils University and other individuals, Jay Dreamer, other people have been talking about this and bringing this information out, that yeah, as strange and as weird as it sounds, this is exactly what we see, and that a lot of the giants have become uh, what we see as mountains and mountainous structures, and it's uncanny and undeniable once you really begin to look at it. And
Oh
it's
no,
not
right.
humans,
Yeah, no, I've seen it.
other
So,
creatures.
yeah. Oh, and the creatures: giant elephants, sea turtles, um, strange
Snake,
looking. I
serpent,
mean, like dragons. Like
dragon,
dragons.
yeah.
Yeah, weird stuff. So we have this first sort of judgment. So do you think that was a flood, or do you think it was the Lord spoke, and because they were destroying the earth, cutting all the trees down and destroying things, like their great grandchildren are doing today, that he spoke and actually said, well, if you want to destroy the earth, I'm going to make you the earth. And he sent out a frequency that actually turned them to stone? Or do you think it was like a process of massive amount of water? Because I take a look at some of these structures then, and it almost looks like it happened in an instant, almost like it was, like when they want to say the Ice Age happened and, the mammoths had frozen food in their bellies and that you could still eat. It looks to me that it was like a judgment that happened like lickety-split, really quick. So what's your take before we get to, the actual, the second creation? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do believe that the judgment was very quick and it was brought upon them fast. And the reason I say that is even with these stories of Atlantis, we have where it talks about how, this ancient culture, thriving culture of millions of people, how it disappeared in 4 nights and 4 days, that not only were the waters of a flood brought upon them and they were immersed and drowned, but also earthquakes and lightnings and meteors or whatever. God sent down stones from the heaven, just like with Sodom and Gomorrah, and rained down brimstone and fire. That this kind of judgment was also part of what became destruction of those ancient cultures and those ancient peoples. And they were again, the fallen angel and um, the giants of old. That um, when Lucifer and the 130 angels were cast down, they took on human embodiment. There's a really interesting passage. I'll share it with you. It's from a book called The Legends of the Patriarchs and the Prophets. And it says that after they had sinned, they were given bodies of flesh. For an angel who spends 7 days on earth becomes opaque and substantial. And when they had been clothed with flesh and with a corrupt nature, then they spake the word Shem Ham Parash and sought to regain their former place, but could not, and were cast out into mountains, there to dwell. From these angels descend the sons of the giants and the Anakim, and from their seed also spring the devils. And so you see that, it's because they came down, they left their first state, they were cast out here to the earth, and then after 7 days of being in this plane of existence, they began to take on physical form. Um, and so, one final part of the passage it says,
Right. And so now we're up to the point to where it seems like for whatever reason, God decided to, on the second creation, when the earth was, void and without form, that he separated the waters from the water. Is it your take that he finally decided to basically cap these fallen ones and the ones that would come thereafter, and basically put a dome where we're almost in like an atrium type, where it talks about the earth as a circle upon the earth, as a ring and a signet, and that we're on 4 pillars. Do you think there was something completely different, what he did with the second, along with the firmament of the heavens? What's your take on? Did he cap them? Did he do? Are we all trapped here, Zen? I mean, we're not getting out of this place. Did he finally say, okay, enough for you all, and basically put us in this enclosed world? So what's your take on that? Go ahead.
well, before the rebellion and before the war in heaven and before the Lucifer and the third of the angels were cast down and cast out, there was no need to separate and to divide what was the heavens, the upper heavens where the Most High dwells and has the heavenly temple and tabernacle established, from that of the earth, because there was no evil, there was not yet any as far as, the angels rebelling and using their free will to bring forth evil and to thwart the plan of the Most High. But he gave them free will as he did us. And so when they decided to try to overthrow he and the son, well, then, yeah, he cast them down and cast them out of the upper heavens and banished them here to the circle of the earth. And he did cap it with the solid, impenetrable structure of the firmament. And he did that in order to imprison them here to this time space dimensionality, because he only gave them a 7,000 year reprieve, and that after this second world age plays out, judgment would come upon them and they would be annihilated as if they had never been. And that's why you see that even the devils and the demons that were inhabiting that one particular individual, when they saw Christ, they said, they knew that he was their judge, and they said that, have you come to torment us before the time? And so they know that he was the Son of God, and he has authority over them, and that he will be the one that judges them at the end of days, and that will bring death, the second death, upon them, and that their reign and their rule and their uh, free will to do as they have here in this world will be ended. Um, but they know that they only have a short time. They only have a certain time, and that when he comes again, his second coming, that their time will be up. And so, yeah, the firmament was put into place in order to lock them here, and to prevent them from getting into heaven again, as Nimrod attempted, and as as the fallen angels are even attempting right now through different means. The whole CERN thing, I believe, is part of that. Even with what they did and what it is spoken about in the Emerald Tablets of Thought, that they were opening these portals and inviting into this world these very dark entities, that they were doing magic and conjuring up, um, utilizing different experimentations, and they basically open these stargates and these portals. Um, that's why we see even now, the Atlantis, the Bermuda Triangle, the Dragon's Triangle over there near Japan, that there's these weird anomalous effects uh, and magnetic strangeness going on even in this world now, and that is left over from the things that they were doing during that time, which brought judgment upon them. That's why the Most High destroyed Atlantis and those ancient cultures during that time, because they were involved in these kind of things.
And that would account for, yeah. And so that would account for like the Tower of Babel, where they're actually trying to build a structure where they could actually go and see if they couldn't blast a hole in it, get through it, or even like Operation Fishbowl, where right after Admiral Byrd came back from Antarctica, they started throwing, Zen, they threw big bombs up. You should see. 100 kilotons.
I've seen it.
They were absolutely nuts. It looks like they were actually trying to blow a hole in it or something. But
yeah, they were definitely testing the structure of the firmament.
Yeah. So now we basically got the framework of where we're at, but now the question is, Zen, and this is the very controversy. You got a lot of trouble for this. You still do. You are. The mainline preachers don't like you at all, Zen. I guess you know that, but to say the least.
Yeah,
but
right.
For instance, right. So you had a third of the angels that went with Lucifer, with Satan, and then you had a third that went with Michael and the archangel, and then there's supposed to be another third, the Ophelmen, or another, and there seems to be different type of species or races in heaven, even like the seraphim. They were serpentine like, and then But anyways, that 1/3 that didn't do anything, what became of that? Are we that third? Because that's what I said last week. That I think the third that basically sat on their butts and cried, did not make a choice, did not pick a side in the war, that we had our own form of judgment, and our judgment and God's wisdom was to create man, and that we were to be incarnated as both a punishment, test, and also free will into these flesh bodies, and that's what the majority of the people are now. They are of that third that had prior existence. But so give us your take on that to bring us up about us, why we're here, and what it's all about for us. Go ahead.
I do believe that is what original sin is. That when you study the scriptures, you have election being spoken about in very ambiguous manner, and it talks about how Jacob was favored and Esau hated. And this is, the Most High God, loving, compassionate, just God, and yet here we're told in the scriptures that he hated a child that had not yet even been born, had not even come into flesh, and had not, through free will and growing up, even had the chance to elicit such determination. And so, in my mind, the only way that such could be, um, as far as really just, and that the Most High could hate somebody before they had come into flesh, is if they had pre-existed and had done something prior to entrance into flesh form and incarnating into human embodiment. And again, it all, in my opinion, ties together with the war in heaven. And as you said, we have a third of the angels siding with Michael, fighting against Lucifer, and the ancient dragon and the forces of Legion. And you have a third of the angels of the Most High joining him in rebellion and in insurrection, fighting against the against Yeshua and the Father and the Holy Spirit, and those were the ones that were banished and cast down and cast out. And then you had this large group which did not make a choice but waited to see what the outcome of the war was and deciding to whom to serve, whether that would be God or Satan. And so I believe that because these individuals did not make that choice during the First World Age, that we are given second chance, and that the majority of humanity being born now are those angels that were caught in the middle during that time. And that because we made no choice during that time, that is what finds us in human embodiment now, that we are being given a chance here on the earth, which is where the knowledge of good and evil, the duality of light and darkness, and pain and pleasure, the whole spectrum of spirit and matter comes together in unity. And this is the proving ground. This is the testing ground for our determination in our allegiance, whether we are going to serve Christ and good or serve Satan and evil. We can't serve two masters, and we have to make a choice one way or the other. And whereas in the First World Age, sitting on the fence caused us to take on human embodiment, if we remain in the middle and choose not to decide with this lifetime and to use our choices and to use the opportunity of being here to really understand and to know Christ as Savior Messiah, and to uh, choose to serve Him, and because of that, have and be accepted in His grace, and to have an eternity salvation through Him. then you will be spewed out. You'll be numbered with those that are counted amongst the wicked. It says those that are lukewarm, the Laodicean church, that he will spew them out. And so you have to use this opportunity, you have to use this choice for making that determination one way or the other, whether you're going to uh, have allegiance with good and with Christ and the light, or if you're going to serve the devil. And so this is what this life is really all about, and this is why we are all really here. And so, these are the things that are read about in great detail in the Sons of God and my seventh book, Skyfall, even my 12th book, The War in Heaven, and the the enmity between the seed lines, the great contest. I speak about this in great detail because, in my opinion, if you don't understand election and predestination, um, it doesn't make sense as to why Esau is hated and Jacob favored, or how some people can be predestinated. And, even the elect were said to be known since before the foundations of the world. The word of the Lord went to Jeremiah and said, I knew you before you ever entered into the womb of your mother. I had foreordained you to be a prophet unto the nations. And so this kind of thing uh, really extends to all of us. It's just that people don't understand that we had spiritual embodiment before ever coming into and being married and joined with our spirits being married with the flesh. And so, if you don't understand this aspect of who we are and how we came to be and what this life and this embodiment is all really about, you're missing the larger picture, and it just won't make sense to you in a way that those of us that understand these concepts are able to study and read the scriptures and then see in clarity that yes, this is exactly what Christ is speaking about and alluding to.
Right. So
that uh, ye are gods, so.
right. So this would account for things like karma. How some people are born like in India or Africa, and it looks like it's life is so unfair. There seems to be like something's followed us. Because it's just not. Why are some people, born one way, some the other, and it just seems to be a disparity, what they call karma. But then that also would account for why this world is set up like it is, and with Lucifer being the god of this world, why is it that? And I've seen it. I've lived long enough. I'm coming up on 60, and it just appears to me that if you want to be cunning, you want to be evil, you want to be shrewd, you want to figure out how to profit and take advantage of your fellow man, it seems like you got a way of getting ahead. But if you want to be honorable, righteous, do the right thing, walk, in the light of God, before God, and not use those advantages in this carnate world, that you got a rough way to go. So, I mean, would that account for the way the world is set up, and also for karma? I mean, because that's the only thing I can think of, Zen, is that you're actually correct. There's got to be something else that there was a predetermination that set this whole system that we're born into. I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I do absolutely believe that that is what we see as far as the war in heaven and how it ties together with the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. Because we see here in our physical embodiment that there are two people groups. There are the children of the devil and the children of Christ, and these two are at war with one another. And it's been that way since the very beginning. We'll pick it up on the other side.
Right, there we go. Yeah, we'll be back in about, give us 4 or 5 minutes. Mr. Rowe may play a song on the other side, but we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
And we are back with Zen Garcia, the Darkside of Purgatory. You are listening to freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio. Back to the Jacker.
Okay, welcome back, folks. Welcome back to the dark side of Purgatory. So now we're finding out that we are actually in a war, and that this world was created to finish the war that was started in heaven, and it seems to be all about you. I mean, it seems like people we are it. We are the apple of God's eye. This is what the war is over. And the reason why you're here basically is a determination of whether you're going to become an immortal, and whether you're going to choose the right path, what Zen said. I do want to make mention of Revolution Radio. Lots of different specials, seed packs, coins. If you all can do just half of what you did last week as far as donate, even if you throw just $5-10 in, because these are the type of shows that I'm going to bring you. In fact, I'm going to tap Zen and find out his whole list of guests, and I'm basically going to just steal all of his guests. I'm going to, see if I can't get him to help me line up these type of people, because this is the truth. This is the world you find yourself in. You are in a war. This is why you're here. This is why you're tempted by the lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes. I mean, think about it. We are sentient beings, or sensual beings. I mean, think about what sex does. Just drives the whole world. I mean, we seem to be created for pleasure, and some of these things seem to be set up as a way to kind of trick us, kind of lure us into, it's all about the football game on Sunday, and going out to dance, and Friday night in the movie house on Saturday night. Lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, wanting beautiful things, beautiful food, beautiful women. And so it's a strange type of war, but it does seem that's what we're set up. But anyways, if you want more of this stuff, you got to go to revolution.radio and contribute something, donate something to the station. I don't get paid. I don't take any money. So this is all like free will sort of love offering. Actually, it's more duty than me. I'm kind of like a soldier. So that's kind of how I live my life. I ain't going to stop now. So anyways, go to revolution.radio, make some kind of contribution, buy a silver coin, a hat, just do something. Stick the dark side of Purgatory. Say, I support this show on Saturday nights. This is kind of my last stop. I used to do a show every afternoon with Deacon John and Maggie, Liberation Nation, at 2 p.m. Pacific time. But I kind of see my days done. I don't think I can make any more real impact on the political realm, and that's kind of going to play out. I kind of gave my last call-in play, which was basically, nationalize the midterm elections to where, basically, Trump basically says, your vote counts. Do I spend money on transgender studies in Vietnam or $500 million for abortion, or don't I? And they didn't want to pick that up. And that would have gave everybody a chance to call in and say, yeah, 1-800, yeah, I'm for abortion, killing babies, or no, don't spend $500 million. But that was too close to a real democracy. I think people warned Trump. They go, wait a minute, you nationalize those midterm elections where people actually have a voice and they can call up like 1-800 number. You make it that easy. Next thing you know, they'll get rid of the senators and congressmen. They'll just start running the whole government off the internet. They'll all start voting. So anyways, it looks like my day's done. And so this is where I'm at right now. All I want to do is talk Serpent Seed Line, Flat Earth, Synagogue of Satan. I want to talk about the real, most important things, at least, because I'm almost 60 and I haven't got much longer. I don't know how long. I've lived a real stressful life. I've been locked up a lot. I mean, I've already had a heart attack when I was 45. So I'm shot up. I mean, I'm really shot up. So this is it for me. But before we go back into this world that we're in and the complexity of it, Zen, I want you to give out where they can get your books, because we can't do it justice on an hour or 2-hour show. Zen, he breaks it down chapter by chapter. It's like an unfolding, especially his latest trilogy, where he's actually put together Anyways, then tell people where they can go, where they can get these books, because all this information and more, times 1,000, are in those books to really lay out all the different details. So if you can give them, your name, website, where they can go, and where they can actually support you, because you actually, unlike a lot of people, Zen actually makes his living off what he writes. He has to work, and he has to search the world. He has to research. He has to write every day. It's like a job. Whereas, when you do radio like this, you can get on and do a little research and then sling a show together. But when you get paid, when you make your living off writing, it's important that the people support them. Or that's why there's so few people like Zen out there. I'll be honest with you, is that people, I don't know if they don't look or they don't care about these deeper things, but unless you support the people who do this, then they're going to go away, and then you're not going to have nothing. But anyway, Zen, go ahead and give your website out and anything else that you wanted to say, and also promote where they can get you, because you're on a couple different platforms every week. Go ahead.
Yeah, the website where you can find not only my books, but we have a publishing company, Sacred Word Publishing.net, and you can find many Flat Earth titles, as well as the trilogy that I've done on the Flat Earth. The Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch, the Firmament Vaulted Dome of the Earth, Paradise Sides of the North, and the Mount of the Congregation. That's a trilogy on the biblical cosmology. As Jacker said, I've written now 20 books, and many on the Serpent Seed, also the Great Contest, the War in Heaven, and the Enmity Between the Seed Lines, which is basically about the bigger picture, uniting the ancient mysteries, mythologies, and what we see as far as the ancient world, the prior times, together with that which is revealed within the scriptures, and speaking about the destruction of the first world age, the myths of Atlantis, all of that I cover in great detail in my work. I've also lately have authored a large number of collections of ancient manuscripts, which are a lot of texts most people have never heard about. And I've put together the Yeshua Christ, the infancy, lost years, and early childhood of Yeshua, and the Testament of the Patriarchs. I did another trilogy called the Great Commission, about the apostles going forth 2 by 2 throughout the world to share the gospel and to bring it forth to all the peoples of the world. And the third book of the Great Commission is the End Time Apocalypses. It's all the books of the end of days that were written by all the various apostles and patriarchs throughout time. I've also done a medieval Irish Apocrypha book collection. And so you can find all of these different texts and manuscripts there at sacredwordpublishing.net. I do 2 radio broadcasts, one here on Revolution Radio on Wednesday evenings on Studio B, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, and then on Truth Frequency Radio on Thursday evening, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern. You can find us there in my YouTube channels, where I also broadcast all of my guest appearances, and the individuals that come on our show, and all the different playlists. We've got over, almost 1,000 videos. All this hours and hours and hours of material. I do make a large portion of my work freely available to the public. You don't have to buy my books. You can find many radio shows about each one of these themes and topics. And so at YouTube,
and then you got YouTube, YouTube,
Endeavor Freedom, and also Zen Garcia, that there's a number of playlists on all these different topics found there at those 2 locations.
Right, and that YouTube channel is Endeavor Freedom, an unusual name, Endeavor Freedom, and you can find that on YouTube. Zen always puts up, it seems like he always puts up his shows a couple of days after of what he does on the radio. At least that's what my perception. and then all this, some side he does other shows like maybe with Rob Skeeble or somebody else, and then you got a whole thing on Torah, and what Torah is, and calendars, and you've kind of transitioned into that world. I know one thing: I stopped eating pork since I started getting into it. I mean, I can't even take a look at it now. I mean, I used to love ham steaks, but I don't know, got into my head, and maybe I saw a video that pigs were actually people at one time, and genetically we're so close. I don't know what happened to me, but I can't do it now. So he also has that. If you go to, ZenGarcia.com or SacredWordPublishing.net, you can get all that. And I'm trying to think of anything else. Zen, if you know of some a couple of people that I can get them on as guest on this show on Saturday night, and you're welcome back anytime you want to come
certainly.
back.
Be glad to help.
I don't even mind doing a partnership with you at all. But so if you know somebody, just let me know. I know you. I watch this one guy that you interact with real well. He's got a big forehead. He's real smart. Help me out. The white guy. I can't think of.
I do so many interviews with so many people.
Oh, I know him. Not Baptist. Professor of Truth.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So anybody like that, Zen, that you can give me your name, I don't mind hijacking them from you. And
sure. Dr. Joy too. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Joy. Yeah. If you want me to line her up for next week, just let me know.
Yeah, I'll contact her and let her know when she's see when she's available and get y'all in touch with. But she wrote the whole Beguiled from Eden to Armageddon, and she also knows about the serpent seed and writes about it very extensively. And we publish all of her books through Sacred Word Publishing as well. She's one of the authors that publishes and relates all.
And she was one of the confirming witnesses when Zen was just doing this Lucifer, father of Cain. He ended up running into and they actually lived fairly close together. So there's actually some photographs or some vlogs or whatever of you two together. In fact, you did something as a tribute to her work. I saw something, Zen, that you.
Just recently, her husband passed away. He had taken a flu shot and gotten Guillain-Barré, and his organs started shutting down over time. Yeah, it's an incredible testimony in that regard as well as to why you don't want to accept the vaccine. So, but I'll definitely get you in touch with her, and you can set up a series of shows if you want. She's got a lot of new material out.
Yeah, sounds good. So Zen has all of this. You just got to go to his website, and I'm sure he's got a pretty quick turnaround. He's got his whole family. It's not him and a big corporation. It's him, his son. I think his son's name is Justin, right? And Joy, right? That's actually two of my children's names, Justin and Joy.
That's so awesome.
I named all. I named all of my kids with a J. I wanted to tie them together. I did that on purpose.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So let's get back to at hand here, Zen. So we find ourselves now. It seems to be there was a war in heaven. Michael fought against Lucifer and his forces, got thrown down to this flat earth, which is open to the eyes of the Lord. He walks to and fro, scans, and so it seems to me that then he capped it, and now we're locked into this war. We've had prophets that come along. Of course, we had our Messiah to show us the way out through his only shed precious blood, as well as the way of sacrifice, which some may call, doing the law, Torah, that type of thing. I will say one thing. Since I did stop eating pork, it's funny when you have to watch your diet, how God comes to mind often on these different things that you should and should not do. You just remember God more. It's just one of those weird things I've come to notice. So we're in this war, Zen, and it seems to be very unfair. I'll have to be honest with you, how God could, we could be born into this world, not know what we're involved in. There's already secret societies, vast treasuries, vast Illuminati type of networks. There's even a serpent seed race, our half-brothers, who are among us that look like us, act like us. And it's like completely unfair. And then God gives us all of these appetites for sex, food, football, whatever, booze. It's just like it's like rigged against us because we are flesh creatures. And so we're cast down. And now that we're coming on to the end of time, or to the final end, now we're finding out, and we have access to all this information, and we're finding out that there's all kinds of created other kinds of creatures, things like Bigfoot and UFOs and grays, and some want to say there's actually fairies and gnomes and people that can turn into werewolves, and just a myriad of things that have been genetically cut. I wanted to get your take, Zen. When these people from the UFO said there's 57 species of aliens here, do you believe that the fallen ones, for literally thousands of years, and even in prior times, they were cutting genetics, and a lot of these anomalies that we see they mixed their seed with the seed of ants, plants, bears? I mean, what do you make of this just weird shape-shifting people, slit-eyed people? I mean, what do you make of all of the various anomalies that we see throughout, humanity, that are all over the internet at will? You can find all that stuff. What's your take on that? Go ahead.
Well, again, it goes back to the hybridization of humanity, and not just modern humanity, but also the pre-Adamic humans. And that, there were many different types of pre-Adamic beings. And then you had the miscegenation, what the Book of Giants calls as the miscegenation, where the fallen angels and the giants that were born of their copulation with the daughters of Cain, that they were the ones that did this genetic experimentation and also engaged in direct bestiality with pre-Adamic humans, which in my mind, that's because of their attempt to enslave the pre-Adamic humans and to use them in unholy ritual, such as the blood sacrifice, victim sacrifice, child sacrifice, all the things that they instituted with their fallen angelic worship, the pagan mythologies, the desecration of human beings, and the cutting out the still beating hearts, the drinking of blood, the cannibalism, all that was incorporated into the religious practices of the prior times by these fallen angelic beings, which is why the Most High brought judgment against them. But it's also my opinion, because of that and all the things that they did, that modern humanity was created as well, and that Adam and Eve fallen, that it would be through us, through modern humanity, that not only would redemption and salvation come, that Christ would be born of the seed of Adam, of the line of Judah, and also of the children of David, that he would be the seed of the woman, which crushed the head of the seed of the serpent. And we see in Genesis 3:15 the ancient, what is one of the most ancient prophecies, and one of the first prophecies laid out in the Pentateuch. And it talks about how, speaking to the serpent after he had beguiled Eve and tempted her to eat fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, beguiling her, meaning wholly seduced. The Greek word is expatio. It means wholly seduced. And then he impregnated her with Cain. And then we see that the punishments that are levied, the Most High turns to the serpent and says, I'm going to put enmity between thy seed and the woman's seed, that at the same time you're nipping at his heel, they will be crushing your head. And so that prophecy was fulfilled when Christ was crucified on the cross, because he was buried. I mean, he was crucified there at Golgotha. Golgotha meaning Goliath of Gath, the Calvary, the hill of the skull. That this is where Goliath's skull was buried after David had taken it as a trophy. In killing the Philistine giant, he brought his head back to Jerusalem to show to the people that through the Most High, he had killed their champion, and that they didn't have to worry about or be fearful of Goliath any longer. And so he buried his head there at Calvary, at Golgotha. And when Christ was crucified on the cross, that prophecy was fulfilled in that Goliath, being a seed of the serpent, a hybrid giant, that he was nipping at the heels of Yeshua being crucified on the cross, and Yeshua, in defeating death and with his resurrection, when he died, he was crushing the head of the serpent. And so that prophecy was fulfilled. And so we see that enmity playing out all throughout time. Cain and Abel, then Cain and the generations of Seth, and then, even the giants, the hybrid giants against the children of humanity, that only Noah and his sons and daughters, 8 people on the ark, were he was the only one that was pure in his generations, that even the serpent seed was carried through on the ark and spared through Nama and Ham. And then the Hamites waged war against the children of Shem and Japheth afterward. That war continued, and between the Hamites and the Shemites, and even with Abraham and Nimrod, we see it continuing between Isaac and Ishmael, Jacob and Esau, the 12 tribes against the rest of the peoples of the world. And then it continued even to Joshua against the Canaanites, Moses against the Amalekites, Saul against the Philistines and the Amalekites. And so this war against the giants, David and Goliath, the Pharisees against Christ, the New World Order elites against humanity today. It is ongoing, and it has roots in the enmity that we see being spoken about at the very beginning. Yeshua talks about in Matthew chapter 13 with the parable of the sower and the parable of the kingdom. He says, let both grow together until the time of the end. And I will send forth my angels as reapers, gather the tares for burning and the wheat for preservation. And so at the end of days, this war will be completed. But until then, it will be ongoing. And see, whereas most churches and most pastors teach that we are all the same people, that's completely not true. That there is a bloodline, a lineage that's completely dedicated to serving the devil, and they have taken blood oath to continue in the rape, pillage, and plunder of humanity. And they absolutely worship their father, the devil. That's why Christ said that of them, you are of your father, the devil. You're the murderers of the prophets from Abel to Zacharias. And so, I mean, it's undeniable that Cain, being the murderer of Abel, he is the progenitor, the patriarch of this bloodline. And that's why we see in the scriptures that in Genesis 4, they are separated from the lineage of Adam, which continues with Seth, because Abel was killed by his half-brother Cain. And so unless you understand this revelation, you just cannot make sense of scripture. Even in the Old Testament, where Joshua is sent into the land of Canaan to slaughter the giants and to spare no man, woman, or child, if you don't understand that this is an abominable bloodline that they are dedicated to evil. They sacrifice their own children as well as those of those that they capture. Um, why it is that he gave that commandment. And they were hybrid. They were giants. And so, it wasn't like they were going up against normal humans. And so people that don't understand that, they think that the God of the Old Testament is some kind of homicidal, genocidal figure. And um, they also teach lately, one of the deceptions is that Yahweh of the Old Testament is Satan, the adversary, which is a complete lie. And the reason people don't understand or deceived along these lines, even with the Gnostic teachings, they teach that Yaldabaoth, which it's clear in the Gnostic teachings that he is called Sakhalos and Samael. Samael, the angel of death, was also a name for the serpent in Genesis 3:6 in the Targum. It's clear that Yaldabaoth is Satan, but again, they're trying to say that the demiurge is Yahweh of the Old Testament. And so these kind of dissensions are rampant in this day and age. And so unless people understand this side of the story, they're just never going to be able to make sense of scripture, because this is the key for unlocking all the riddles that are contained therein. It's the reason why the patriarchs and the prophets kept a detailed list of genealogies as to whom begat whom, who sired whom, and who was the son of whom. And if you go to Luke chapter 3, verse 30 through 38, you see that there we have the genealogy of Christ given in great detail, and Cain is excluded from his lineage. And the reason being is because, as it says in 1 John chapter 3, Cain was of the wicked one. That word of is ekionos. It means descendant of, child of, or son of. And so he literally was the progeny of the devil. And this teaching has been hidden. And it's condemned as I am. It's criticized. People call me a heretic, a blasphemer, whatever. But people that are truth seekers and that open themselves to this possibility, it becomes undeniable. There's so much confirmation for it. And I bring it forth in Lucifer, father of Cain, and also the great contest, enmity between the sea lines. It's without question. But most people don't open themselves to the possibility of it. I find that most people aren't interested in truth, really. They only want to confirm what they already think they know. And most of what mainstream Christianity is teaching with regard to truth is false. It's completely idolatry and it's deception. And so most people are led astray, which is why it says in Revelation 12 that that old serpent, that ancient dragon, who deceiveth the whole world, that most people and most churches are caught up in deception. They don't know the true cosmology. They don't know the real revelations of the scriptures. They're not following the right calendar. Um, there's so much deception that they're led into as far as the pagan holidays. They celebrate things like Christmas and Easter and things like that. And they ignore the Levitical feast days. They don't understand the lunar calendar, all these different things, even with like eating pork. In the scriptures, it tells us in very clear detail the reason you're not supposed to eat pork and other animals like carrion, birds of prey that eat carrion is because the animals that they consume are diseased. And pigs, they cannot sweat. And so they hold their toxins and their meat is considered unclean, disease, which they are. I mean, pig flesh is one of the most nastiest things you can eat. And pigs will eat anything. They literally could subsist off of eating human waste, which in a lot of places, that's all they are fed. And so it's absolutely disgusting the things that they eat and consume. And when you eat them, that's what you're eating. And yet, again, that's why God tells us not to eat bottom feeders, catfish, um, shrimp, lobster, those things that eat the carrion off the bottoms of the oceans. They're cleaners, they eat all the toxins, and and so that's why the Most High tells us not to eat those kind of things. And so,
no, absolutely. There's all that. Am I coming through? It seems like I'm.
Yeah, you are.
Can you hear? Oh, okay. Alrighty. Yeah, absolutely. The whole way modern Christianity has the Christian worldview set up. You're right, Zen. There's so much stuff that it's just incredible. But getting back to the serpent seed line, if any of you all want any proof out there, all you do have to do is take a look, and you don't have to look very far to find who these people are. I mean, you can see people like Joel Osteen. They got reptilian eyes. You can see Britney Spears, where her eyes blink sideways. I mean, you can see all kinds of anomalies all over the place if you actually take a look, that there's actually a serpentine type look to these people, and eyes almost look like rattlesnakes. And if you actually want to see it in the flesh, which I have many times, once I learned how to recognize it. In fact, I went into a church one time, and there was this young guy, and as soon as I saw him, because I knew to look, boom, I could see, wow, he had reptilian eyes. I don't know if he was psychic or what, but that guy took off. He went so quick to the pastor, and before I know it, I got a couple guys around me in the church. This is a new church I went to, and they were watching me real close. And even when we broke up afterwards, you know how you come out of church, everything else, these guys were right with me, and they kind of almost escorted me, and they said, well, thanks for coming. And boom, I was out of that church. But, if you want to see the people who have this Canaanite bloodline anomaly, all you have to do is look for, just think of the most successful, powerful person that you know in your world. And you just go and take a look and talk to them for a little bit. And it won't be too long before you will see it. Most of the politicians are like that. And when you get up to the higher genetics, like Barack Obama, these type of people, I actually think that there's actually shapeshifters out there. Zen, I don't know how they do it. I don't know if it's an overlay or how it's manifested, but this bloodline is among you. And the reason why it is so important is that if I had started out as a young man when I was 15, starting out in life, and I knew what the score was, my life would have been completely different than how it was now. I mean, I was just a sucker. I believed the lies. You're supposed to eat a big fat ham of all times on Easter. I mean, what are Christians doing eating hams on a day called Easter, which is to Ashtar or whoever, the egg goddess. I don't know which one that god is, but they got us completely messed up. And that is important. One thing I wanted to ask you about, Zen, was do you think that there's actually a civil war among these bloodline elites, these Canaanite elites? Go ahead.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they are taught to murder and assassinate, and that is one of the techniques that they use to get ahead and to take out those that are in their way. I mean, this bloodline consumes themselves. Not only are they waging war and using these same techniques against us as the children of Adam, but they do that to themselves as well. So, yeah, absolutely. They are slaughtering each other in their struggle to gain power and assume authority. I mean, just look at the Clintons, and all the people that they've killed and that it is known that they have murdered. The Bush cabal and all the people that they killed. They were even responsible for the murder of John F. Kennedy Jr., and when he was going to run for presidency, and his plane was blown out of the air. He and his wife and another person were killed. And so,
Yeah,
I mean,
no, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
But so my question is then, among this, because it does seem to be that the people who rule each of these nations, and they got a whole system set up, they got a whole strata society. In fact, Dr. Joy, when she comes on, she knows about the gang stalking and the MK Ultra, all that type of thing, how they actually raise their children, where they actually prostitute their own daughters. I mean,
it's horrible.
and they shatter their mind, all of it, bloodletting, actual rituals where they sacrifice infants, actually drink blood, which supposedly some of these people who can actually shapeshift, they actually need that human blood to maintain their form. I don't know how it works. I haven't got it yet, figured it out. But my question is then, so do you think that there are actually some people that are of this Canaanite bloodline that actually want to make it back to God, that actually know that they are the offspring of the wicked one, that they got the genetics that go all the way back to Cain of these bloodlines, and that they actually want to break out of it, and they do become Christians, and they do basically are going to war with their fellow tribesmen, so to speak, and try to make it out. Do you think that's possible? Do you think there's actually some people in the Canaanite bloodline that are actually do want to go and be reunited with Yeshua? Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. There are, but it's very difficult because of their election that they are part of these Illuminati families for them to get out and to know if they can be redeemed. In fact, I share a story in my latest book, as far as the enmity between the seed lines, talking about this investigator, this geneticist who was hired by one of these blue bloodline Illuminati, these blue bloods, to test his DNA and to see if there was a difference between the children of Cain and the children of Adam. And so I'll read this passage. It'll give clarity as to what you're asking. It says, in his notes, my friend penned some personal thoughts after having considered his observations and the source of his DNA materials. On the plane ride back stateside, my friend, who at the time was one of the most knowledgeable DNA researchers on the planet, pulled out the biggest piece of mental jerky I've ever gnawed on. His benefactor test subject believed that while most of the sons of Adam had double-strand DNA, he had been told by his family that he and his blood relatives were distinctly different and that he, like his fathers before him, had triple-strand DNA. He wanted my friend to secretly prove once and for all if this was true or not. The subject claimed that his extended family and their cousins, who are kings, queens, princesses, and princesses, as well as leaders of industry and banking worldwide, believe they are children of an otherworldly race of humanoid beings. He'd been taught by his tutors that once upon a time, his ancestors had fallen to earth after some cosmic calamity in the time before the garden. He believed that while their ancestral mother was Eve, their ancestral father was not Adam. He was torn to know if a child of Cain was actually genetically different and whether he could be saved. He thought of the Vatican's pronouncement that the aliens are our cousins and the Vishnu teachings of a time when gods flew in spaceships and destroyed whole cities in a single blast. He even had notes about Elijah being caught up in a chariot of fire. Maybe he had misread or misunderstood the entire history of his Bible. Maybe from Genesis to Revelations, it was about some far more tangible and real fallen angel, alien cousins than the ghost-like destroying angels he'd always pictured in his imaginations. I'll just stop there, but it's very long. It goes into great detail about who these people are and how they know that they are different, and as well that they know that their ancestral father was not Adam, but the devil himself, and that they are the children of Cain.
Yeah, I've heard it. I've actually heard from many Illuminati family that were actually born into it. They are given their history. A lot of them can take it back hundreds of years. Like Prince Charles. Yeah, it's thousands. Yeah, Prince Charles says that he's actually a descendant from Vlad the Impaler, and that they can go all the way back through history and show where this person was a duke, I was a queen. This person was such and such. And so now this brings us up to the different strands of the bloodline. So this is what I hear through all my studies, everything that I know, and this gets into the taboo, more or less the synagogue of Satan, where people don't like to go. But it seems to be that there was a Pharaoh's bloodline. I hear that there was actually a Chinese serpent seed bloodline in which the family Li, of which the president of China, Xi Jinping, he's actually a Li, that he was of that particular bloodline. There's one in Japan, of course, the pharaohs, and then the pharaohs moved to Venetia, and they became the Black Venetian families until they couldn't hold that water city kingdom anymore, and that they actually went to Switzerland. One guy said it's the Octagon. It's actually the Swiss, which are more and more the direct descendants of the serpent seed line. Other people say, no, it's the Jews. It's the Jews. This guy says, no, you're wrong. It's the Swiss. And then I heard that, no, it's this other bloodline that moved into the Jesuits. And so you have all of these different competing pockets of power. And what I wanted to ask you was, where do you think where did it metastasize the most? Was it the Khazarians that are now the modern day Jews of Israel, which are not really the Jews, but the Khazarians? I mean, how do you think these bloodlines actually spread out, Zen? And do you think they're in all countries, all tribes, all colors, races? And then tie that in, do you think there's any correlation between all these massive alien abductions where the Greys are always going for sperm and egg, they follow certain families, and that they actually propagate this also serpent seed line? I mean, how do you construct what I'm saying here with these various pockets of power and stories with the Inca and Quetzalcoatl? I mean, did they fan out? What's your overview of that? What I'm trying to say? Go ahead.
Yeah, these bloodlines are very ancient, and they go back to even the Atlanteans and to those that were dominating and ruling over even the ancient peoples, even the pre-Adamic humans. That you had the priesthood, the hybrid priesthood. You see in the ancient times, we have these individuals that have these elongated skulls, these hybrid cone-headed type of people. They were the ruling priesthoods. They were hybrid beings that were part fallen angel and also part, human. They were the children of Cain. And so they ruled over the masses. And it had always been that way. And it still is today, that those people that sit on the thrones of the world all over and that have authority and power, that rule over nations, that control the money, that print the money and loan it to the governments, that rule over all the assets of the world. Queen Elizabeth, she owns 1/6 of the entire landmass of the world. I mean, and it's in her name. And so those kind of things, that's real power. If she wanted to, she could give every person alive on the earth several acres. I mean, that's how much real estate she owns. And then you have different organizations like the Vatican, which 15 billion followers, and they're a huge conglomerate. And they.
You mean 1.5 billion, not 15 billion. 1.5 billion, right?
No, I think it's like 15 billion followers. But
no, there's supposed to be only like 7.5 billion people on Earth. I think you're thinking of
Oh,
1.5 billion.
Oh yeah. You're right.
Yeah, 1.5 billion. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of followers as far as the Catholic Church. It's a huge organization, huge religion. A lot of people, support them, give money to them, donate to them, and so these are the kind of institutions that are being run by this cabal. But they have so much wealth. Money is not even the thing. It's the power, the control, the prestige,
Right.
the above law status. I mean, money's nothing to them. They print it. They print it and loan it to the governments of the world. They create it out of nothingness. And then they charge interest for, different peoples in different countries to even have the privilege of using it. That's how much power and authority. I at the top of the Illuminati pyramid, the powers, the principalities, rulers of darkness, they make the determination as to who will be a star, who will be a music star, a Hollywood star, sports stars. They create and control all of that. It's all a dog and pony show. It's all a charade. And they do all of that in order to keep people, their minds occupied and off of the real reasons and questions and, as far as the understanding who we are and why we're here and what all this is really about. They keep us locked up in the carnal aspects of this world, in the lust of the flesh, the pornography, which is daily and even on every night, even on mainstream television now, it's so predominant. And so they keep us locked up in sin and choosing to live in sin. Most people choose to live in sin and they don't prioritize the kingdom. They have no concern for their eternity and no regard for salvation. And they don't know their Savior Messiah. They don't know that, Christ came to redeem and to rectify the fall, and that even when Adam and Eve were cast out of paradise, there were prophecies given unto them that he would come into the flesh at a certain time, at a certain age, and that afterwards he would defeat death, enter down into Sheol, which there's a whole nother aspect of the cosmology that people don't understand. The bottomless pit, the abysmal chasm, is at the North Pole, directly below Polaris. That not only is that the entrance into the upper heavens, into the throne room of God, it is also the hollow earth entrance into the domains of the devil. And that is where Jacob's ladder is located. I write about this in great detail in my newest book, Paradise Decides the North and the Mouth of the Congregation. And even the waters of the oceans, they, for 6 hours, will drain into the interior of the earth. And then 6 hours later, they are expelled in geyser. And then 6 hours later, they are sucked back into the interior of the earth. And 6 hours later, they are spit out again. And this is what creates the high and low tides of the earth. And so these kind of dynamics are not spoken about, not conveyed, and not understood. But again, it shows you that in the scriptures, we have the truth of the cosmology being relayed and how we live on a plane. And that, everything, there's one sea level, and all of that which is risen above that sea level is dry land. And so even the dynamics of the Genesis story of how the earth being the foundation for the heavens, the firmament created on the second day, the dry land being elevated above the waters of the deep on the third day, and then the luminaries, the sun, the moon, and the stars, and all being placed within the firmament in the tabernacle of the heavens on the fourth day. I mean, those kind of things show, because
We're here.
go ahead.
Well, no, here's one for you, Zen. This is a new one for you. So the 3 deepest lakes on the earth, I think there's like 2 of them in Russia, and I'm not sure where the other one's at. It might be China. I'm not sure. But the 3 deepest lakes on the earth, they actually happen to be inland saltwater lakes. I don't know if it's the Black Sea or I can't remember which 3 there are. But it's almost like there's actually connections within the earth that's where the tides, when they flow out, they just don't flow out from the north. I think there's different places on the earth in which the water comes up and flows out, which creates the tides. But I know we only got a couple minutes here, Zen. So before we go, one last time, everybody get your paper and pen and just write this information down, because this is where you can find volumes of all the Zen's works. And like I say, he's in this all the time. In fact, he's almost like a policy wonk or a technocrat, in which he'll go back to chapter and verse, or this manuscript. He can't actually help himself because he's just so immersed in it. But if you can go ahead and just give one more time all of your contact information, including your YouTube, Endeavor Freedom on YouTube, and the other places, then before we end up getting cut off. And then if Mr. Rowe wants to jump in and ask you any question in the end, because I know he's all down with a lot of this, but he's got his own take too on the flat earth and aliens and that type of thing. But anyways, then give your information before we get cut off here. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Our main website is sacredwordpublishing.net. You can find me on Facebook under Zen Garcia. Our YouTube channels are Endeavor Freedom and Zen Garcia. I do a show here on Wednesdays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, Revolution Radio, Studio B, and on Truth Frequency Radio, 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern on Thursday evenings. And like I said, you can contact us through sacredwordpublishing.net to ask us questions or to purchase any of our books or anything of that nature. And I do a Q&A show once a month and answer a lot of questions from a lot of people. So feel free to contact me.
Yeah, and he's also got the Torah calendar. I've got to get one of those, and that'll actually help you on the actual day what the Sabbath actually is.
Right. Because all that is
I think he's got
phases of the moon.
That's what's that, Zen?
All that is, Sabbath and the Levitical feast days are all dependent upon the phases of the moon. That's why the moon moves in cycles of 7. And if you understand that, you can make that determination, because every lunar month begins with the appearance of the waxing crescent moon. That day is excluded from the next 4 7-day sabbatical counts. And so you have the Sabbaths aligning with the first quarter, full third quarter, and lunar conjunctive moon. And, the appearance of the lunar month is always cited by the waxing crescent moon. And so it's a very interesting way that God has set it all up. But Sabbath is aligned too, and Levitical feast days determined by the moon and its 7-day phases.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Then once you get into it, you start thinking about what you can eat, what you can't eat, and then you start thinking about God. And then it's kind of complex the way the Sabbaths are set up, so you got to concentrate. But again, then you start thinking about God. So it's just funny how he has this stuff to not massively disruptive to your life, but enough to where you got to bring in remembrance, Yahweh and his son Yeshua. Mr. Rowe, I know you're producing, and thanks so much. I mean, you do heroic work. Did you want to hit Zen with any question before we get caught by the bell? Go ahead.
Well, no, I'm good. It's fascinating stuff. So I'll catch you with a download next time. So we only got 1 minute. So, but
yeah,
good as always, man.
Always good to be with you.
Thanks and thanks so much, Zen. Thanks for spending your time. I know you do a lot of radio, and this is actually, wow, it's probably midnight your time, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's midnight. So anyways, thanks for coming on. If you can give me some of those names of the people, because I want to pursue this. And, I don't care how far they want to go. They want to talk shapeshifters and some of the anomalies and some of the political anomalies and, even almost like with the Israelis and the Palestinians using white phosphorus. I mean, are these blood sacrifices? I mean, a lot of complicated stuff out there. Thanks so much, Zen, for being on the show, The Dark Side of Purgatory. Okay,
pleasure.
I'm the hijacker. Yeah, thanks so much. God bless. I'm the hijacker. That's the show this week. Next week, we'll see you same time, same place for The Dark Side of Purgatory. And support the station. Hijacker, over and out.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.